I'm really excited to introduce my friend and colleague of now over 4 years, Patrick Kehoe, who is our head of customer success and services. He's a steward of creating great outcomes for our customers, and he's on a panel with some really, really incredible leaders in commercial real estate. So I'm going to hand it over to him to introduce the panelists, the panel topic. So round of applause for Patrick.
Okay, our next panel here, just a quick introduction, then we'll get into it. For the next 45 minutes, we've a panel that we're trying to accomplish two things. So when we surveyed a lot of people who came here last year, a lot of you said that we really want to hear from some of the top owners about the big business problems they're dealing with. And in addition, we want to hear how they are focused on trying to unlock value at VTS. So it's not about the features they're using, but it's really how do you mobilize large organizations to get value out of software. So they're going to share their stories around how they're trying to solve business problems in their organization and what's working, what's not. And then the first part, we're also going to touch on what they're specifically doing to adapt to a more tenant-centric world. So I have 4 guests here today, 4 esteemed colleagues. We have Mark Zikakis, who's head of asset management for CBRE GI. It's a modest 100 million assets under management. Is that right, Mark?
Well, in the U.S., you doubled it, so thank you.
Okay. You'll take that.
It's 45 million square feet under management, and primarily a multi-tenant portfolio of office with about 1,500 tenants.
Great. Mark's been on the platform, one of our earliest customers for about 4 years or so now. We have Mario Barrafato, who recently went through a merger, so is with the largest Canadian REIT, so Choice Properties and Crete got together. And Mario has been a long-term customer, maybe on the platform 3 years, started with Hightower, and was kind of the champion of technology in their organization, and is kind enough to join us today in the midst of going through a merger. We have Kevin Danehy. Kevin is Global Head of Corporate Development for Brookfield, which is a mid-size owner, Kevin, thereabouts. Based here, so we're lucky to have Kevin here. Kevin's on the board of a number of technology companies. He's part of their big 200 million VC fund efforts to invest more in technology. So Kevin brings an interesting perspective. And finally, we have Michael Turner. Michael's president of Oxford Properties. It's a global corporation. They're focused on many different countries and has been a big proponent of tenant experience. So that's our panel for the next 40 minutes. So we'll jump in. So maybe to start, if we can start with you, Michael. You've been talking about tenant experience or customer experience for a number of years now when we spoke. And you've also talked about the need to just kind of change behaviors and really parallels from the hospitality industry. Do you mind sharing with the audience here today some of those perspectives?
Sure. I mean, so we were talking on the phone about this, and the commercial real estate industry is about 40 years behind its colleagues in hospitality. So 1961, Izzy Sharp created a new category of hotels called luxury hotels. They had existed here and there previously, but he really created a typology and branded it and focused on this amazing thing that happens inside these boxes. That is, there are people that go into them. And so even the vernacular tenant, that's 1,000-year-old language. I think that the industry has a long way to go about understanding the customer experience journey, and I applaud your platform. It's part of that journey. But basic tools that we're going to need as part of this process don't even exist. So as we discussed, things like the equivalent of TripAdvisor or J.D. Powers or other types of ratings that allow you to differentiate between one box and another box, one experience and another experience. What you guys announced today with Brendan's announcement, I didn't hear it, but he was sharing it with me. That will be part of, I think, a journey about differentiating between different types of assets and different types of service. And the industry has a long way to go on that journey.
Great. And can you also share just thoughts around how that can lead to more branding and differentiation? Just some lessons from how service can play a bigger role. Can you share that with the audience here?
Well, again, I mean, I could give you lots of examples. I think an easy analogy for all of us to access would be, again, go back to hospitality. So whole wide range of brands, 1-star through 5-star, different types of names, and the customer has an expectation about the level of service, price, and quality that different brands are going to offer. And I'm not sure that commercial real estate will fully fulfill that journey, but we will go very far from where we are today, where I think the vernacular in the industry is all about ownership and supply and control. And that's kind of like how oil cartels talk about who owns the supply. And when you put the power of choice into the hands of the customer, it's going to change what you need to do to win. That's how I'd summarize it.
Kevin, maybe shifting to you, Brookfield have been a big proponent of this shift. Can you share more of how your organization is approaching?
Sure, Patrick. First of all, I'd just like to thank you and the VTS organization for inviting Brookfield to participate in this panel today. So, the Brookfield story. First, one thing I just want to do is respond to the tenant centric phrase, and I think I heard, I wasn't able to see her speak, but Lisa Picard had made reference to it as well. Is we're really even more focused on the employees of the tenants as our customers, because we think that digital connectivity offers us as an owner and operator, probably the first time in history, an opportunity to really develop a relationship with those within the tenant organizations, beyond the person signing the lease and making the decision, and the facilities person who's responsible for making sure we live up to our obligations. So really looking at the entire population of employees in our buildings. Brookfield's got we own about and operate about 600 million feet around the world in 40 countries, 100 cities. But for purposes of this description, we'll focus on principally our office building portfolio. But what we've done over the last 15 years is diversified into the other major real estate groups as well, or product types. So what we've been doing is focusing on a trend towards urbanization, and statistically, in I think it was 1950, 29% of the world's population lived in urban areas. In 2007, for the first time in history, it hit an inflection point where same number of people lived in non-cities or non-urban areas and urban areas. And in, I think it's 2040, it's expected to be 67 people, or 67% of the world's population will be in cities. So we've focused on investing in all asset classes, but particularly in global gateway cities, where we can create a multi-type campus. And that first pillar is related to what we've also identified as an ongoing shift, and that is that the workforce is shifting towards a much larger proportion of the workforce being millennials and young Gen Xers. And so, again, statistically, in 2014, something like 25 or 29% of the population were millennials. In 2020, it's expected to be 50%, and in 2040, it'll be 75%. And the thing that makes this so important is that the decisions related to where real estate is, or where workplace, so the tenants in our buildings are going to be located, is based a much greater part today than it was 20, 30 years ago on where those millennials want to work. Because they choose their employer based on experience and on quality of the employment opportunity, much more so, and they want to make sacrifices related to the company they work for and compensation, unlike previous generations. But they're also more tech savvy than any group in history. And so we're in the process of investing in creating a digital platform, so that being the third pillar, to be able to accommodate this digitally oriented, tech savvy population of employees in our buildings. And we've employed, we've deployed point solutions, some of which you'll know and I can describe later if you like, but Ritual, which is a way to buy food and beverage, to pick up real fast. Hyper to geofence our properties. A company called The Newsstand that has most of its revenue generated from media and creates community. Live Safe, which is a emergency notification, but another community creating tool. And then we're integrating those point solutions into platforms like we've invested in Convene, which is a flexible workspace product. So that helps us in placemaking. So when we co-locate these properties in urban areas, we look to create a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week live, work, play ecosystem. We call that placemaking. And so flexible workspace is going to be an increasing component of it, but having a digital platform to connect people with place and with these tools is a big part of what we're investing our capital in.
Great.
At this point.
Maybe just one question on that. So, Brookfield announced that they're launching a $200 million fund. I know, Michael, you're on the board of some tech companies too. Kevin, can you just share with the group who are wrestling with technology, right? It's ever present in the business and people are trying to figure out how to build a strategy around it, right? It's a tool, it's not a strategy, but how do we bring these tools to work for us towards a common purpose? Can you share with maybe the audience how Brookfield is approaching that today?
Yeah, we're pretty simple about it. We feel like we've done a pretty good job raising capital, deploying it with assets, and we like to believe that our competitive advantage or stock and trade is operating those assets. What we've also been very self-aware about is we're not good at operating businesses like flexible workspace enterprises, whether it be Convene or many of the other good ones. We're also not good at developing technology. In fact, most of us don't know how to spell it correctly yet. That's just the reality of our industry. So we're very focused on identifying emerging categories of these new business functions as we see them, and then focusing on who's the leader, who do we think is going to be the breakout leader in each of these new categories. And then both in terms of deploying across our portfolio, if it's a service like Honest Buildings or VTS, or a tenant like Convene, we want to put our portfolio to work. And then in those instances where we think our capital can create a strategic alliance for us, an opportunity for us to earn a good return, we're deploying capital. And so after a couple of balance sheet investment experiments with Convene and Honest Buildings, we set up our private ventures fund, which is a venture capital group. But we're very, very interested in clubbing these deals with like-minded owner-operators so that we don't have to, make the mistake of trying to do it ourselves, right, and not have the critical mass in order to ensure success.
Great. So Mark, when we spoke, you're obviously a very hands-on operator. You're primarily focused in the U.S. Can you share just CBRE GI's strategy to this shift to become more tenant-centric?
Sure. I think for us, this journey really started over 10 years ago, that we saw a need to differentiate ourselves, and we wanted to shift from landlord to partner. What was interesting is we were ready to shift in a lot of cases before our customer was. And if you think back 10 years ago, we were primarily dealing with a real estate director who was comped and measured and rewarded based on occupancy cost. And things like attraction, retention, employee engagement never even entered the conversation. Matter of fact, you'd have a conversation that would stop pretty quickly if you hit there. But we continued down the path, and one of the things that we've done is we've really listened to our customers. And I mentioned we have about 1,500 tenants. The average size is about 15,000 square feet. And what we heard was a number of themes. Well, the first is we're dealing in this generational, record low unemployment. And there is this absolute war for talent to attract and retain people. And there's been this interesting study that Deloitte did that said the average company has about a 13% annual turnover rate. And the cost to replace an employee is between 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary. So now, as we're, and then the other key theme we've heard from our customers, the absolute need for agility. It's even beyond flexibility now. We have to scale up quick, we have to scale down, and we need to make decisions quickly and implement quickly and have the ability to change our footprint and our work environment. So from those two themes, I'll sort of stick with the recruiting and retention for just a moment. So from those themes, we looked at what can we do to help that multi-tenant building who is not a Google or a Microsoft and cannot compete on the level of amenities and services and experience that they have, and bring it to a 500,000 square foot, million square foot office building so that the tenant experience begins when somebody walks in the door of the building, not after they get out of the elevator, don't talk to anybody, and then walk into their space. And so we've focused on, really, in terms of implementation, three prongs. It's first and foremost, and I can't say enough about it, it's culture and people. Second, it's actually the amenities and services that we offer. And then third, it's technology as a tool to free up people and to make us more efficient, frankly, to free us up so that we can spend more time adding value at our properties. And just, again, getting tactical with this group is really interesting. What we found in a multi-tenant office building that could have 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 employees working in it, a property team of 5 people in a management office, security staff, engineering, parking, maintenance, they can, by virtue of the way they approach their job, they can change the culture of a building. And we invest heavily. We take a lot of cues from hospitality, a lot of cues from tech. We send our property GMs and our equivalent of a concierge, which is called a 5-star manager. That's our branded operating model. We send these folks to the Ritz-Carlton for leadership training, and 75% have never stayed in a 5-star hotel like this or experienced that level of service. Once we do really an intense indoctrination about our culture and our values and how we want to operate, then we bring Ritz trainers to our building to work with the entire team. So it's really, we've always been in our amenities arms race. I would tell you, for us, the most important differentiator has been the culture piece, really leading, supporting, and empowering people to create an experience that resonates with the employees in that particular market and building.
That's great. Yeah, we've heard a lot about amenities and services. I think sometimes that gets a little overlooked is that cultural change. Mm-hmm. I know, Michael, when we spoke, you also mentioned some investments you were making in that area. Can you maybe share some with the group?
Sorry, in culture
and training? Yeah.
Sure. Some same themes. I mean, we for many years, we've been engaged with our employees in a training exercise called the Dialogue Series, where we actually talk to them about an incident that happens with a customer, and we give them the tools and the empowerment to make a decision on the spot to make somebody have a better experience. So we started that with customer journey mapping. I think we mapped about 160 or 170 different customer journey maps about how does the occupant interact with our building. What's the experience when they come through the parking garage or the elevator lobby or the primary lobby in the instance of an office building, for example. And we did the same things in the other sectors in which we operate. And this is exactly the kind of vernacular that I hear increasingly, and it is a journey that the entire industry is on, and it is all about people, and it's all about the employee experience. And real estate costs are typically about 1/8, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/12 of the overall highest expense on a typical CFO's P&L, the highest one being employee costs. So when you hear things like 1.5 times salary to reclaim a lost employee, and you know that your real estate costs are 1/8 or 1/12 of what the overall employee expenses are, I think this is a worthwhile investment for for the industry to invest in. I also think it's a way for those who want to invest in that capability to build differentiation. And for those who can't keep up, they will have to fight on one axis. It's called price. So, that will always be there, but we hope that that's not the only basis upon which we're competing with people in the future.
Great. So I'm going to shift gears with you, Mario. So we've heard a lot today. There is a tidal change going on in this industry, and there's huge investments in retooling buildings, pre-built services. From a CFO lens, you're accountable for the investments that your organization makes. How do you think about that? Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a no-brainer right now. It makes financial sense and it makes business sense. From an economic point of view, these are things tenants want, and they're willing to pay a fair price. And I think by participating, the tenant commits to your building, so it has long-term value. So from that point of view, it doesn't make any sense not to make that investment. I think the issue that we've been seeing lately is when it comes to making a real estate decision versus a tenant-centric decision, we're always leaning towards a tenant-centric decision. An example is we had a ground-level retail space for lease, and a tech tenant approached us and said they would like to use the space for their employees and have it extend out for some outdoor space. So now they have a great cafe, although I think there's more than coffee going on there right now, but it's a cafe. And they've got the outdoor space, and so they're committed to the building, but even if they're not committed long-term, we've now shown our other tenants, that this could be a great space for your employees. So that's an example. And then when it comes to amenities, coffee shops, restaurants, built-out space, it just makes sense. The economics are there, but it's just good for the building. The part that was an eye-opener today, though, was more longer-term. And when Lisa was talking about the transformation of the operation of a building, that resonated with me today. There's 3 pillars of our business, and so it's investing, it's financing, and it's operations. And if there's going to be a transformational change in operations, then there's going to be changes to how we're financed and how we invest. And I just looked at our, being a public REIT, at our equity investors. They basically invest capital to generate a stable, predictable, reliable source of cash flow, and they de-risk that by having long-term leases and long-term debt. And so when you talk about the changes in operations, you may see the lease terms change. Then the long-term debt may not be there, as lenders may follow the term of the lease or the covenant. And so, and also we talked about co-working space. If in-house management companies don't have the capability to do that, we now lose some of our profit. So you're seeing a change in the cash flow pattern and the risk profile, and so that will affect the equity investor. The other part, on the physical investment on the assets, I mean, we've been living with location, and that's, it's served us well, but now it's location, brand, experience, community. Those are things, and when I heard the panel or the presentation today, I thought, will community and brand maybe provide everything that the location did, that provides you with people, restaurants, access, and then with what's happening in transit. So it's interesting. I'm not saying it's concerning, but there's a lot of change that's going to be happening in this industry. And my takeaway today was I've got to be on top of it. I've got to prepare my stakeholders from that point of view, prepare the company. You have to invest in this. And while we may change the traditional risk profile, there's other things we can do to make sure that the stability of the cash flow is there, like providing better service and being on the front of this. So those are kind of the takeaways I think I have on the finance side.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to shift gears for a minute. So, each of you have been leveraging VTS in different ways, frankly, and also through trying to solve different problems in your organization. Maybe, Mario, to start with you, can you just share, a lot of the audience here are business leaders, some technology leaders too, in different stages of leveraging a platform like VTS. And with that, they're probably wrestling with, how do I get my organization on board, or how do I maximize the value? Can you just share kind of how you've approached that at CREEP and any takeaways or advice for folks in the audience kind of working through those issues?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we identified a problem. So this wasn't just an IT initiative. This was something from the C-suite that said, we do not have the color we need on our leasing pipeline. And this is going back to 2015 when oil was hitting record lows, and we weren't sure how this was impacting both our office and retail tenants, and so we needed this pipeline, this vision, and we had to get everybody involved. And so we wanted to make sure that our employees didn't think this was a fad. We had to technology enable this and make it part of our culture. And so again, with direction from the executives, we set up a team that had technology, operations, accounting, finance, and basically represented the whole company. And we took it slow. We had to make sure they trusted the process, that this was here to stay, and it would better our company. And that was harder than I thought. We implemented training programs. VTS was incredible in providing support. And where people would say, this doesn't work, they would come back and say, you're right, but we'll go back and look at it. And we had solutions. And so we got trust in the platform. And once people had trust in the platform, they started using it. And as they used it, they made it better. And now it's part of our culture today. And so the commitment that we had made to them was, for investing the time, we're then going to use VTS to bring efficiencies that'll make your job easier, and then one day insights that'll make you make your job better and more fun and help you do it, maybe faster. And so right now we're at the point where all of the CREET properties are on board and we use it. We know our pipeline better than ever. We've actually used some of the information to do our public disclosures because the information is thorough and credible, and it's great information that we want the public to know. We have more properties now with the Choice merger, and we'll attempt to get those online. So the next step is we introduced workflow approvals, and we thought the efficiency is we're going to eliminate the manual process for approvals. And so now we started that, and we've had high engagement, and people trust the fact that if they put in the effort, the duplication will go away, and we'll have an automated workflow. So from there, the commitment has been amazing from a company-wide perspective. And then the next step will be is based on the announcement today and similar ones, is we have all this content now, all this information, so we have to start mining this data and using it and getting the insights. But we took it slow, and it's just having that trust and having that excellence of use and then providing efficiencies and insights was kind of the pattern we followed.
Right. I guess for people in the audience, any advice for them as they're trying to get their organization on board or trying to get more value?
Yeah, I just think it's got to come from the top. There's got to be a mandate. It can't be a fad or a trend or a one-off to solve an issue. We did solve an issue, but we decided to make that a staple of our business. And so I think first and foremost is that, and then have a great leadership team below the executive level that represents the whole company and is very responsive and just listen to people's concerns, because once they buy in, once we had that trust in the platform, people made it better. Tenfold. Yeah.
Great. All right, we're gonna shift to a little exercise here. So Mark, you're a very data-driven guy. I know you've got a lot of inspiration from other industries, and so Mark's going to share with us a little bit of how he has approached maybe making your leasing and asset management more productive at CBRE GI.
Okay. Before we start with the slide, when we met Nick and Ryan 4 years ago, they were in my office on a Tuesday. We were at a bar Tuesday night, and we were signed up Thursday with our portfolio. We just saw this immediate.
You were in the bar the whole time?
A good portion of it, and but we saw
is
this.
Is that recommended best practice?
That we saw
my
this.
answer to how.
Well, we saw this immediate value in the software, and for us, I think our expectation, and we always want to have a goal for what software is going to do for us. And I love somebody had this test they call the Toothbrush Test. You're going to use it at least twice a day, and as a measure of, okay, it's being adopted. But we moved through the adoption phase fairly quickly because we set a goal for ourselves as ownership and asset management leadership. We quickly adopted this mantra that if it's not logged in VTS, it didn't happen. And it became the greatest way to partner with our teams. So we have a standard weekly call for all of our multi-tenant buildings. On that call are the leasing team, the property management team, and for us, our 5-star manager. And we devote about a third of the call, one leasing operations, and then 2 5-star, again, tenant engagement activities. So we're demonstrating that all 3 are important. And what we found is as we were having our discussions with the leasing team, and again, our goals were modest. We wanted the ability to track our leasing pipeline and manage it. And then second, we just wanted transparency into what was really happening. And it gave us this great opportunity to partner with our brokers, and we really look at them different now. So one of the things that I know I've told Patrick and Nick and Ryan and Brandon is VTS has dramatically outpaced our ability to keep up with you. There are so many incredible features in the system that make us better operators, but we want to focus on a couple of things that are going to drive value and drive leasing performance. So a lot of you are used to seeing your dashboard when you sign on to your page every day, and that'll show you the number of inquiries you've had, the number of tours, the number of proposals, leases out, leases executed. Well, one of the things that we look at, that's our first part of discussion when we're on a weekly meeting. The next part of our discussion goes to conversion rate. And in the dashboard section, again, I'm getting tactical with you because even though I lead asset management, I still, at any given time, I have 3 or 4 properties of my own, and I want to keep my hand in. And typically, they're the things where we have opportunity and we need a turnaround. So I'll just let you click over to the first slide here. And I took a little bit of liberty with some generic VTS stats, and I rounded to make math simple. But in your dashboard page, VTS will tell you over a trailing 12 months, how many tours have you had during that period? In this case, we use an example of 1,000. How many tours made it to proposal? In this case, it was 500. How many leases made it to leases out? It was 200, or 20% of that 1,000. And then how many got converted to leases executed? So in this case, it's 150 or 15%. So as we're looking at improving our performance, improving our outcomes for leasing, and we're saying to ourselves, okay, we want to drive our leasing, and we want to do 20% more leases, just again, using round numbers. There's a couple ways to do it, and frankly, they work best together. But the first way, and almost the old school way when we didn't have transparency, was just saying we got to drive more traffic to our buildings. So in order to get a 20% increase in deals executed, if you don't have an impact on your property teams and your ability to convert prospects into completed leases, you need an additional 200 tenant prospects coming to your building. Now, that has implications for the way we market, the way we're communicating with tenant rep brokers, what perks and incentives we're offering folks to come in. But I want to look at this in tandem with our ability to impact and improve our conversion ratio. So the other way to get a 20% increase is by increasing your conversion stats through the funnel. This is where we have great transparency that we just haven't had before. And what's interesting to me is if this is a national stat that we're going to close about 15% of the transactions we tour, and I'm looking at this on a portfolio basis, I can drill down on an asset manager basis, I can drill down on a region, I can drill down on an individual asset, and I can see how a specific team or group of teams is doing compared to national average. And there's a different prescription that takes place in each one of these. And we're finding that with our network of brokers, and we partner really well with CB, is that we're sharing best practices between teams, and we've got teams who are in very distinctive markets who have nothing to gain but also nothing to lose by sharing closing and conversion techniques. And we bring those people together in order to learn, and then we do a lot of presentation skills training as well, closing training, negotiation skills training, wherever the point of need is here. And a lot of times too, when you look at these prescriptions, going from tour to proposal, there's opportunity for us as owners too. If we're asking a team to market space that is not attractive, there's room for us to invest in that space, invest in the tour experience, and make sure that the actual product offering is much more relevant. And then too, just the way the tour is being held, how effectively are we understanding, our customers' needs, and how effectively are we creating a tour experience when we got that one chance to make an emotional connection with them and to make it so meaningful that when they leave us after eight other tours a day, that we stick out. They remember us as the building that did X, Y, and Z. So this is a big component of our work here, and what gets interesting is there is a predictive component of this too. So if you're looking at your daily deal tracking, and I checked this morning, we had 200 prospects in the tour range, and it was about 2 million square feet of property tours. Well, just based on this conversion ratio, we can expect of that 2 million square feet to close 15%, so we should see 300,000 square feet of signed leasing from that distinct stage of the proposal. So we're looking at our, view of 3 months to 4 months to 5 months out to say, okay, if we do nothing else, here's what's going to hit our stacking plan, and what do we need to do about it to get ahead of any opportunities or challenges that we've got. So, and this exists on everybody's dashboard right now, or do you charge me extra for that?
I think I should say no comment, because
Okay.
I'll probably get it wrong. No, I think this is standard, so I believe so. But anyway, thanks for sharing that. That's great. I think maybe just to get another perspective, Kevin, as one of the largest owners, you were one of the first organizations to really embrace a lot of the workflow. So you rolled out approvals at scale. And I know you're a big proponent of unlocking the value from your tenant database. Can you share maybe with the audience some lessons from
I'll
that?
give a real quick story on it. So we've had Brookfield, just like many other organizations, have had a really tough time cracking a code on a CRM, client relationship management system. And so I like that toothbrush rule. If people aren't using it at least a couple of days, or frankly, if they're not using it all the time, then the data it sucks. So it's not going to work. And the obstacle that we need to overcome as an industry that Michael was talking about, and being able to change the way that the capital markets start to look at how we underwrite our deals, as Mario was talking about, it's going to take a collective effort. So, just in the spirit of sharing, I mentioned before, we got a global portfolio. We got all 5 property types just with our office building portfolio in North America, because we operate on a very decentralized basis. When we acquire a company or asset, typically we'll leave the technology infrastructure and many of the people in place. So at the end of last year, we had 22 different accounting systems that were managing our portfolio of office buildings in North America. So it's not, when you ask a question, you don't get a complete answer. It's fragmented at best. And so forget about CRM. I'm just talking about, figuring out which tenants are in which buildings, how much they're paying. And so we switched, after a 2-year study, we switched to an ERP called Yardi at the end of last year. And, it's a painful process, but we now have a single source of truth, I'll call it. And we're working with VTS, with Honest Buildings, with Argus, to integrate those tools at the back end so that we'll have a much more sophisticated tool with which to do data analytics and get software robots and start doing business intelligence analytics on it. When I describe anything like that or use terms of art like that with our senior executives, you get a glazed over look, and what we do is just generally call that our Moneyball project, right? Because if we don't have the tools in place, we're bringing a knife to a gunfight. And so collectively as an industry, if we don't share those wins with each other, then we're not going to have the infrastructure, the people, the technology, the culture with which to be able to move the industry, right, and make a difference. And so, I mean, we've seen what that's done to the yellow cabs here in New York or the black taxis in London. I mean, they didn't wake up soon enough to see Uber or Lyft coming. And we're doing our best, both ourselves as well as in collaboration with others, like many of the people in here, to avoid that. And so what we've done is required each of our deal teams to, they have to record in VTS at some point during the transaction process in order to get approval for that lease to move forward. And so it ensures that at least at some point, every single deal is going to be input into VTS, so at least getting a base standard. And then as the younger members of the organization and our brokers and service providers begin to adopt it more and more, we're picking up velocity, but we've got very high adoption rates. And so we're happy so far with our ability to use that system. And we're hopeful that the TRM, the Tenant Relationship Management Program, that is next on the horizon will give us a centralized database. I think, Adam, I think it was, we had 29 different ways of recognizing Wells Fargo in North America alone. So when I get a call and say, so-and-so's going to a meeting, and what's our relationship with Wells Fargo? It's like, where do you start? And so the ability to potentially integrate rent roll information with Outlook database kind of information about who's got relationships with us is a gold mine. But unless someone else here in the room has figured it out, we haven't. But that's where we'd like to get.
Great, thank you. And Michael, so you've your Boston portfolio on VTS. I know in your kind of new current role, you're kind of reevaluating across the organization and looking at kind of leasing and asset management. Can you maybe, and you met with VTS early on, and you've seen them recently. Can you maybe just share with the audience how you think about, as kind of president of the company, what's the business problems you're trying to solve, and how do you take an approach to make technology successful in your organization?
Sure. There's about 8 questions in there, but I'll start rambling. I think it was probably 4 years ago, maybe a little longer, that I met Brendan when he and his team were then Hightower. And they came and showed us their product and their platform, and we said, it's amazing. It looks better than anything that we currently use. But we had built our own systems out of necessity. The industry didn't have any systems, so 10 or 12 years ago, we spent a lot of money on technology to build capabilities to ask your system one source of the truth, as well as digital workflows and so on and so forth. So we said, come back to us when the capabilities there. Certainly the user interface was well surpassed what we had. And fast forward today, and I would applaud VTS in having well surpassed our expectations with respect to the kind of analytics and usability that the platform provides. This is a great example of the kind of tools that can empower your organization. So we're looking at all of these various platforms and tools. Something that I would share that was expressed earlier is there really needs to be some executive sponsorship, or these things die pretty quickly. But you also need some real champions that help marshal the resources and drive the cultural adoption across the organization. Most people, unless you've been through a large technology implementation as an owner or somebody who's running a business, if you've done it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, then you don't appreciate that these are huge exercises in change management. So we have a number of software tools on our platform, and getting people to change their behaviors, getting them to learn new technology tools, getting them to engage platforms, especially cloud-based platforms, where the more you engage, the more powerful they are to your overall organization. It's a big process. And so we haven't found the holy grail in terms of CRM yet. We do have a robust Salesforce package in the background to understand the individual occupant in our building. But all of those exercises have been enormous change management processes, and you have to be able to sponsor that and weather the fortitude to make sure it's adopted across the organization. It's not a sexy answer, that's just the truthful one. Right. And if you're able to do that, I think that you can continue to extract value, and just, it's about staying incrementally ahead of the competition. That's all you can do, because tomorrow they're going to figure out what you have, so you got to come up with what's next.
Great. That's what we have for our panel today. So I want to give a big round of applause to the panelists.